I am so excited to share this conversation with Adi Jaffe with you. He goes into his program, Ignited Recovery, as well as some of his story that led up to why he's doing what he's doing now and where he struggled in his life. But more importantly, Adi really goes deep into things like labels and shame around addiction in our society, as well as some maybe controversial thoughts, but I think important ones around recovery as a whole and the way we look at it as a society. So if you or someone you know has been struggling with an addiction and struggling to get clean and thrive in life, you are not going to want to miss this conversation. Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger Deveau, and this is Sobriety Starts Here. All right, so thank you, Adi, for being here with me today. I'm super excited to talk with you, and let's just dive right into it. I know you've got a book coming out, and you've got your Ignited Recovery course, so let's just dive on in. And can you tell us a bit about what your book is coming out and about your course?
So I'd finished my own degree, and I was studying the neuroscience of addiction and statistics. So kind of like how to assess people having issues, how to evaluate programs and see if they're working. But then a lot of the work that I was doing was on the neuroscience of addiction, the brain interaction between different pharmacotherapies and helping addicts, but also, how does nicotine affect the brain? How does cocaine and methamphetamine? Like I did methamphetamine studies with animals, just kind of studying the effects on the brain and on their behavior. And when I got out, I was a full proponent of the disease model, like 100% bought in, right? That was the only way to look at it. Everything we do is because of brain influence, etc. And I got out and I was looking at doing research of my own. And one of the things that really kind of surprised me the first time I heard it was this whole statistic about 90% of people don't go get help. And I went, why is that? That's just weird, right? There's no other condition that we know of where 90% of people who get diagnosed don't get help for it. And so I started digging in deeper. I went and did my own research. I kind of joke about it in the book. I did what everybody does when they find out something interesting. I conduct a research study. And, it took like a year and a half between proposing it and getting the results in the end. Actually, a little bit more, almost 2 years. And I found out
just
something.
Like everybody else.
I know, just like everybody else. Like you ask a question and you spend the next 2 years researching it. I found a couple of things that seemed more obvious, like money and logistics were a problem, right? So it costs a lot of money. It didn't cost that much money like in the 80s and 90s, but it does now, a lot of money to get help. And the logistics, like if you just think, I'm going to stand up in front of a crowd of like 300 professionals next week and talk to them. And I do this with a lot of professionals I talk to. I say, how many people here, if I just told you that I have a way that will for sure help make your life better, all you got to do is spend $50,000 and leave for 30 days. How many people would sign up right now? Nobody raises their hand. We all have things to do. We all have our life, but we have used that as an excuse to say that addicts are lying, people who are in denial, and their brain has become so maladapted that they're unable to make rational choices when none of us would choose this thing. I mean, rehab is like jail for addicts, if we really think about it. Sometimes really nice jail, but jail for addicts. So those things came out and they made sense. But then I got two other things. One of them, the shame. Obviously, a lot of the work I do now is around shame. And shame was a huge factor in multiple ways for almost everybody in my study who didn't get help. And I wanted to see why that is. And then another thing that was really interesting to me was the fact that 50% of my participants said that they did not want to quit, like that they enjoyed using too much to quit. And when I kind of shopped that finding around, people were saying, well, yeah, addicts like using, but they're not really serious about getting help. And that didn't really ring true to me. And so as those people kept participating in my study and kept saying the same thing, I kind of said, well, what if there's a totally different way of looking at it? And that's when I started exposing myself to other things that were out there. And, read some of Stanton Peele stuff and started looking at the whole harm reduction movement. And I started saying, what if we didn't have to offer abstinence as the help? Like, what if we could help these people not quit, but help them with their addiction? And I got a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I bet.
But honestly, that was the thing that made me leave research behind and go, I think I'm going to pursue this. Like, I think I'm going to go look and see if this is possible. So I started a treatment center, obviously another thing that everybody does when they figure out that something's off. And to be perfectly honest, and there will be people who watch this, it didn't go well because I didn't know how to manage people. I wanted to change people's lives. I didn't know and appreciate the complexity of running a mental health and addiction treatment center. So it went really well for a couple of years, and then it crashed and burned. But during that time, we did a lot of research. And I now know for sure that you don't have to make people commit to abstinence on the front end of treatment to get them better. You just don't have to.
Oh, wow. I love that, because it's kind of opposite from a lot of what you hear out there in
100%.
this industry.
Zero need to make people commit to abstinence. Like, I don't even understand why that's part of the conversation now. Because when we compared the people in our treatment center that committed to abstinence from the beginning and the people who didn't, their outcomes were about the same. The people who committed to reducing on the outset maybe actually did a little bit better. And in really weird ways, right? Like, everybody's negative moods and anxieties and stress went down. Everybody's pretty much equivalently. But in terms of positive emotion, it only really went up for the people who committed to moderation. It's almost like the people who committed to abstinence on the front end came into it with this limiting belief system about the world, like, I have to withhold for myself. Now, to be fair, 40 to 50% of the people who came to us looking for moderation ended up abstaining. So another thing that everybody always told me was not going to ever happen. And that is, everybody always says an alcoholic will never give up their alcohol. Nobody in our treatment center made them, and a lot of them decided to give it up on their own.
Wow.
So that threw all the assumptions into the wind as far as I was concerned. It was like, then what else are we putting out there? So when that fell apart, I was kind of trying to figure out to myself, okay, what do I do next? And now we always try to deal with the logistics and the cost, but it's tough. Like,
yeah, totally.
Offering treatment for less than thousands of dollars a month in an office is nearly impossible, and insurance doesn't pay for almost anything nowadays. So people come out of pocket. And I've met families who spent $500,000, $1 million on treatment over, 5, 10, 15 years. It's insane what's going on out there.
Well, especially when you look at the stats of maybe 10% of people that need help actually go get it. And then only a small percentage of those people actually stick to it. So think of all those people spending all that money and time, and it's not working.
Well, by the time they came to me, some of them have been to 4 treatment centers. Other people have been to more than 10 treatment centers, dropping hundreds of. So obviously each iteration didn't work. Sometimes they would drink or use almost every single time right after treatment. Obviously the system wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm now doing is, and so the Abstinence Myth book, which is coming out, and if you go to ignited.com, IGNTD.com, there's a little bar at the top. You can push a button and get on a mailing list to get announcements as it comes out. But honestly, it throws around all the assumptions you make about what addiction is and how we should look at it. And I can get into that a little bit more in depth here as we talk. But yes, that leads people, what I lead people into in the book is I talk about 3 principles that Ignited Recovery works through, and then sort of 9 steps, with the 9th step kind of just being a coda of you got to keep doing this throughout your life, of a way to live better. So the whole idea for Ignited Recovery in general is forget the alcohol and drugs, right? Stop looking at them. You're looking at the wrong thing. You keep looking at your solution as the thing you've got to fix. You don't have to fix that. You got to go fix the problem. I'll give an analogy that I started really, really liking recently. So Ignited Recovery has an online course. It's $1,000, lifetime access. I keep updating it, and like life-changing, right? People are
I've
emailing me.
seen some awesome testimonials from it, actually.
I mean,
People have really great things to say.
my
about it.
favorite thing, I mean, I'm sure you have the same experience, right? When you're in this area, like, you want to see people's lives change. And to hear from people that they did the course and they look at their problem completely differently and they have hope now and they're doing better. I got an email from a woman yesterday who, just by watching my 1 hour free webinar, has been quit for 3 weeks.
Wow.
She's been to other treatment centers. She's done all this other stuff. She watched a free freaking webinar and she's been abstinent for 3 weeks. So it's delivering everything I wanted to deliver. It's like, all I wanted was to help people without making them quit their life and mortgaging their house. And it's working. Now, in the course, you know, I get this. So I also have live weekly chats with my course participants, and a lot of really cool little kind of nuanced things come out of each one of those meetings. And so, you know, the book walks people through all the different principles. And I had a meeting. I also have like an elite club of people who do want to work with me one-on-one as part of the Ignited Recovery course. And I had one of those meetings, an individual meeting with one of those clients. And at the end of our first meeting, it's a big 2 to 3 hour download meeting. He goes, well, what about the weed? Because we didn't talk about the weed. And I go, what about the weed? Right? We just spent 3 hours talking about everything in his life. And he goes, well, should I keep smoking? And I go, do you want to keep smoking? And he goes, I mean, I don't really want to, but I'm scared that I won't be able to stop. So, okay, well, why don't you just process what we do right now? And he's doing a daily check-in morning and evening with me. I said, let's just do this for now. Let's see if you can take 1 day off. And I want you to just communicate with me throughout the day what that's going like. So that's what it started like. And he was like surprised that I'm not giving him a plan of exactly what to do with weed. He's now 1 month into this thing. He smoked 5 days out of this month. And this is a guy who's been smoking every day for 18 years and quit once for 3 weeks. And it was like the worst 3 weeks of his life. And now he's texting me saying, I love this. I'm getting all this other stuff done. He's made more money in the last like month in his business because he's more present for it. Like, we are sick. Our system is sick because we keep looking at the wrong solution. And that's not to say that biology doesn't play a part. And it's not to say that environment doesn't play a part. And trauma and psychology plays a part. And for some people, like you talked about with AA, spirituality plays a part. Yeah. But what I posit, the ideas that I put together in the Abstinence Myth and in Ignited Recovery is, we're not all the same. So for some people, biology is a huge part. And for some of the people I've worked with the right medication mix and a little meditation, we've got it. They lick their problem clean. Not a single meeting in their life. Other people need more social support. Other people need years of therapy and coaching. Like, we keep pretending like we're going to find a single solution that'll just work because addiction is this one singular thing. It's not a single thing. And so the solution is not going to be a single thing. And what I even tell people in Ignited Recovery is, your solution is not going to be a single thing because you're dealing with one set of problems right now. 10 years from now, your problems might be different. So it's not about figuring out the single solution that will be right for you forever. It's about understanding your problems and kind of the milieu, the world that you're working in. And then the way I talk about it in the course is I help people develop the toolkits for a lifelong ability to deal with those issues.
And I love what you're saying, even just talking about it's not a one solution fits all. Because I mean, if we even look at diet, I think we've proved that over the last, I don't know how many years. Different things work for different people. Some people thrive on being vegetarian and vegan, and some people thrive on a paleo meat heavy diet, and some people thrive on something in between. But why don't we approach addiction like this? Why don't we try to look at individual people and figure out what's doing it for them, what's working for them, what's not working? And so who do you really target with this Ignited Recovery? What kind of people did you really build it for?
So this is what I thought would happen. On the front end, I thought it would be mostly people with alcohol problems. And the reason is that's the biggest, most prevalent problem in the country, right? So the biggest rate of deaths, although we're losing more and more people to opiate overdoses here year by year. And so it's about to catch up. I mean, I hope it doesn't, but it looks like it might. And but in terms of the substance prevalence, I thought it was going to be about alcohol. What I found out is I was totally wrong. So sex, gambling, food, alcohol, and drugs are all on there. And so I'm now doing the work of creating small little specific video segments for people to get help with the specific problems. Like, you know, I don't want the language to be alcohol centric if you're there to deal with sex, but what people are essentially telling me is, because the whole point of the program is to deal with the underlying issues, what's actually going on under the surface for you, then it doesn't matter almost what problem you come in with. I'll give you the example that I was talking to about I have all these ways, like all these little analogies to try to explain to people what I mean by underlying issues. And so that guy, let's say with the weed, he was on one of those weekly calls, and he was really talking, again, this is at the beginning of the treatment, about how much should I use, when should I use only at night or in the morning? And the analogy I used with him was this. I said, look, the question you're sort of asking me right now is, what size Band-Aid should I use? How thick should it be? And where should I put it on my hand? Because I keep getting cuts on my hand, and I want to know, you know, should I put the Band-Aid all over the finger or just on the cut? You know, should I wrap it with gauze first? What is it that I do? But what I'm looking at is the fact that in the other hand, you have a knife. And you're playing that game, that parlor game where you stab in between your fingers. And every time you hit your finger, you're asking me, like, which Band-Aid should I put on that finger? And I'm like, you're holding a fucking knife in your hand. I don't care about the Band-Aid. Forget the Band-Aid. Like, I can fix that finger every single time, and you'll keep hurting yourself. Let's figure out what is happening in this other hand that you keep doing that is causing you to hurt yourself. And if we can figure that piece out, and again, that's the biology, the environment, the relationships you're in, the psychology, the experience you've had in life, all that stuff wrapped together. If we can figure out that problem, and I take the knife away, we're good. You don't need a Band-Aid, right? And that's why I don't even think abstinence matters, because look, I drink. I used to be a meth addict, and I drink. I smoke weed twice a year. And by the way, I hate it. Like, the only reason I smoke weed is because I'm impulsive. And that is one of my characteristics in life. I just know that. And we were just this weekend, this happened. We were walking to the movies. My wife and one of her friends were walking around. Her friend smokes weed. And so she pulls out a vape pen. It's totally legal in California now. So she pulls it out and I say, do you guys want to take a hit? And the stupid impulsive part of my brain goes, yeah, sure, why not?
Well, it's been 6 months, so you forgot how much you don't like it.
No, I remember how much I don't like it. I take one hit, and within like 45 seconds, I hate life. I'm paranoid. I'm anxious. I'm starting to think about, what am I doing with my life? Why did I quit my job? I should just get a regular job with benefits. Like, I don't do well with weed. And when I drink alcohol, I mean, sure, I drink sometimes because I've had a stressful day. I mean, you drink alcohol to reduce anxiety and kind of calm yourself. And, but I'm not holding a knife anymore on the other hand, right? Like, there's no part to me that is saying I need to fix what's happening in my life. And I don't believe that I can do it myself. So I need some outside thing to make me feel better about it or forget it. So I'm not worried about going back on meth. I'm not worried. I'm not one drink away or one pill away or one hit of a meth pipe away from ruining my life. I'm not, because so much of that has been dealt with, and I'm transparent about it. I'm honest about it and all that kind of stuff. So that's, in a huge kind of big description, the idea behind Ignited Recovery and the Abstinence Myth book.
And I love it. And I know that a lot of people that hear this message are automatically going to have their defenses go up. Like it's dangerous to keep drinking, or it's, I'm going to die if I keep going this way, and I'm powerless. These are a lot of the words and powerful words that people use around addiction and around getting sober. So how do you deal with that when you're talking to people, when you're telling them about what you do, even telling them that, yeah, I'll still have some drinks every now and then, but I'm not at that borderline point where it's going to go and ruin my life again. What do you say to that?
So a couple of things. There's a lot to unpack right there. First of all, I do not recommend that anybody who's been long-term abstinent and it's working for them start consuming alcohol or drugs. To be really, really clear, that would be a stupid fucking message, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're doing something and it works for you, none of my messaging has to do with stop doing what works for you. It's the exact opposite. It's find what works for you. So if you found it, this doesn't apply to you. You know, change the station, send it to a friend who hasn't found a solution, figure something else out. But like, I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to people who are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my second point is people who say that are pretending that what we're making the choice between is having people abstain or having them not abstain using my system. But that's not what we're talking about, because 90% of people aren't doing shit. They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, let's stop pretending that those 90% of people are somehow damaged, or they don't understand what's going on with them, or they're sociopaths who don't care about other people. I'll tell you that when I talk to people the way I talk to them, I don't see denial. The only times I ever see a person telling me I don't have a problem, it's when it's a young adult, like an 18 or 19-year-old, whose parents are making them go to treatment. And then, you know what? They haven't seen it yet. And so I probably can't help them in that moment. I can only help people who know that they want to change. But people come to me because they want to change. They just don't want to quit. We've somehow made that connection absolute. And so that's a false choice. Pretending like because people are coming to me, they're not choosing abstinence is a false choice. Nobody is doing this. 90% of people are not doing what you're suggesting they do. So shut up, keep doing your thing. And the people that it works for, hallelujah and amen. But what do we do for the other 90% of people? We can't just keep leaving them out there because people are dying.
Yeah.
And they're dying because they're being ignored. They're dying because 17-year-olds are told that they're lifelong addicts. They're not freaking lifelong addicts. A 17-year-old who's been experimenting with opiates among his friends is likely just dependent on opiates and is so enmeshed in a group setting and an environmental influence that has told them that this is okay, that they're stuck. And there's probably psychological issues in their family and things that they're running away from and trying to hide. Help them with that. Stop calling them an addict. They're 17-year-olds. You cannot diagnose them as a lifelong chronic addict. I don't care. I don't give a fuck what any psychiatrist says. That is insane. Like a 17-year-old who has just started experimenting with substances, even suggesting that we know what the rest of their life looks like is ridiculous.
Well, especially the more we learn about the brain and how it really can rewire and change and does throughout life, especially in those younger years.
Right.
To think that it's going to be stuck a certain way forever kind of goes against what we're learning as we learn more and more about the brain.
Yeah, and we so misrepresent how judgmental and shaming the conversation is. Sure, if you've been in recovery for 14 years, you have learned to come to terms with your lifelong addiction and you've figured out a way to compartmentalize that in your head. Let me remind you and let me tell you that that's not what your initial experience was like. And that there are a lot of people who are staying out of getting help because of that language. But if you're so dogmatic that you say, no, they have to get it first. If they don't get it, then they can't get help. Then that's your fucking fault. That's not on them. I want to help people. I don't care if somebody comes to me and tries the course, doesn't try the course, does the free hour, has a 15-minute call with me or whatever, and then says, you know what, I don't actually like your way at all, but you just gave me an idea, and goes to a yoga class and recovers. I don't care what they use. It's not about them using Ignited Recovery. Ignited Recovery is another tool, another method. And in it, what I actually suggest is there are an endless number of tools. Go find whichever ones work for you. For me, it's more like a mindset idea. And once you wrap your head around, there is not one way, I'll help you find tools, but you'll keep finding them your whole life. What I'm hoping we get to, and that's what I love about this podcast and what you guys are doing, is where else in life have we suggested that there's only one way of doing something? Let's give people as much exposure to as many things that can help them. And if agape does it for you, or you find that Buddhist meditation is your thing, if you like running marathons and you find that as long as you're exercising every day and you run 40 miles a week, you don't have time to go use drugs, that's so great. If you need a higher power and you want a higher power in your life, go get it. Go to temple, go to church, go to an AA meeting, do whatever you want. But have a choice, and stop believing people when they tell you that you don't have a choice because your brain's been so fucked up that you literally can't think anymore. I, every once in a while, get triggered. Still happens 15 years after meth. Very rarely, but it happens. That's the brain part. But you can do the work to have a measure of control and a measure of understanding of your biological impulses that will allow you to do the follow-up work that will gradually reduce their impact. And whether that's medication, biofeedback, EMDR, whatever it is that you end up doing, there are so many tools out there. We need to just start embracing all of them.
Yeah. And I love that because, again, it's the barrier to entry for most people, like you were mentioning. It's thousands of dollars to go to treat. And that's kind of the solution that society is giving people, right? You have a problem, complete abstinence, go to a treatment center, spend 30 days there, spend thousands and thousands of dollars, uproot your life, kind of put everything on halt. And you're right. Like when you said that example, if it's 50 grand and you got to go away for a month, who wants to do it? It's like, I couldn't see myself choosing that, especially since most people who are having and struggling with addiction, to picture that kind of commitment to wanting that outcome just seems crazy to think that that's what they want. That's what they're going to choose to do.
Sure.
Completely.
And then you tell them, well, like 15 to 25% success rate. So it's not guaranteed to make your life better, but like you got a 20% chance. You just got to leave your job, go tell your boss you're a drug addict, which they're going to love, right? Go to your wife and tell her you're going to leave her for a month and withdraw all your savings. And yes, you've made your life miserable with your wife, but now you got to tell her that because you've made your life miserable, you got to empty out your savings and you can't go on vacation that year or buy the house or whatever it is you wanted to do. Like, if we stop for a minute and we think about how high we've made the barrier to entry, there is zero surprise in my mind as to why so few people participate. And so it's our job, not the people who are struggling. It's our job to break that wall down and make it so easy that you can literally stumble into help. And that is, by the way, the point of needle exchanges. That is the point of safe injection sites. That is the point of food banks that give addicts food. That's not what I do, but there are people who do amazing work there. And the point is, if I don't tell you that in order to get food, you got to quit drugs, but I just give you food, now you're talking to me. And you might come to me one day and say, fuck, man, this drug thing is getting to me. I don't know what to do. And bam, I'm there to help you. And the same with injection sites and the same with clean needles. Like, this fucking judgment shit, we got to end it. We got to end it. It's literally killing people every single day. And that's it. It's on us. It's not on anybody else. It's on us. People in AA, the only requirement for entry is the desire to stay sober. Why is that the requirement for entry? Why is the requirement for entry not to make your life better? Like, a lot of addicts don't necessarily want to get sober because they can't even imagine a life without the drugs. Like, life is so painful and so difficult and so dark. They can't imagine it without the drugs, but they can fathom it being a little bit better. They can imagine having some semblance of a normal relationship with somebody in their life that is not going to steal from them or cheat them or lie to them or, abuse them. They can imagine a little bit of that. So why don't we help them with that? And that's
start the conversation, start the path, start the momentum, and let them get some kind of results that'll help reinforce that path that they're deciding to take. And I think that's also something that you keep really touching on is it becomes their decision. It's not forced upon. It's not my judgments and my beliefs put on you. It's them deciding to take this path and better their lives. And so if someone does come to Ignited and they sign up to your course and they want to get into it, what's the experience like?
So what I try to do is create almost like a one-on-one course. So it's in modules, just in about 6 modules, and each one has 2 little different parts to it. It's about 13 hours of videos at this point. And it kind of unfolds step by step as I walk you through this idea of how do you completely reconfigure in your mind what is possible for you. And then I walk people through this idea of, so it's honest exploration, figuring out how you got here and where you are exactly, radical acceptance, building a bridge over that shame and eliminating this idea of how deeply ingrained the shame and the stigma is for everybody. And then once we do that work and we can understand where we really want to go, building realistic goals that are measurable and you can have accountability for, and then finding the tools to help you get there. And I walk people through it. So it's not one of those overwhelming things where the first day you sign up, you have like 14 hours of videos to watch. You know, it's like an hour a week, an hour and a half a week, but then there's all these exercises. There's about 50 exercises. Like, I think we're up to like 150 page workbook that literally guides you through the whole thing. And I love it.
You're big on people taking their own pace. If you want to go quicker, you can go quicker. But if you're overwhelmed in starting, you can just take it at your pace and go through your system.
Yeah, what I tell people at the outset when they sign up, there's a welcome course and I said a welcome video, and I say to them, look, finish every part before you go to the next part. Mm-hmm. And if that takes you a month, great. That's not a bad thing. That's great. That means you had so much to do in that module. It took you a month to finish it. The quickest you can finish the course is about a month and a week. But I've had people who took 3-4 months to do it. And then the other thing that ends up happening is we have weekly chats. So it's an add-on. Up until recently, it was a free add-on, but now it's like it's not that expensive. It's $150 a month. And every week we get together for an hour. People submit questions, and we do a live chat, just like this, like a Zoom call. People normally have their videos off because, again, shame, right? People they don't want to expose themselves, and I 100% get it. So they log in, they ask questions, we talk. I love the Tuesday live chats because, you know, there's always an individual piece to all this, and you get to really ask those questions. So that's that piece. And then the people who are really, really committed, I have one additional level where, like I said, we talk. So we talk for 2 hours a month, one-on-one, after a big, like 2 to 3 hour big sit down. And I do this with people all over the world. And then we do daily check-ins. So there's accountability between the member groups and myself for everybody in that group, for people who still really, really want the hand holding for one-on-one.
I think that's also a powerful point as well, is it's you don't need to find it close to you. You don't need to live nearby or travel. It's at home on your terms. You don't need to worry. You know, it's anonymous as much as you know who they are, but no one else does.
And you can use another name. I won't know if you use another name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and look, that barrier of entry just keeps coming lower and lower.
It's $1,000. You can make it in payments. You can get in LA, you can barely get therapy for a month for that much money. In the rest of the world, you can probably get about like 2 months worth of therapy for that amount of money. Lifetime access to this stuff. And you can do it anywhere. You don't have to quit your job for 5 minutes. I mean, I have guys who tune in. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesdays when we do the live chats. They tune in during their lunch or they watch it after. Nobody knows. Nobody has to know anything. I mean, a lot of these guys talk to their wives or their partners, and the women talk to their husbands or their friends about it. But you don't have to talk to anybody about it because you get to do it without interrupting anything. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to go anywhere. And so, yeah, right. Like I said, shame, cost, logistics, and quitting. Those are the 4 barriers I found. And now with Ignited Recovery, I feel like I finally was able to create something where none of those barriers need to apply. And the other thing that is in there is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So I only want to do this for people who feel like they're getting what they signed up for. And so I haven't had anybody take me up on it yet, but there's a full guarantee. If you paid for the thing and you stop it, just stop it. I want people to just take that first tiny little step, the first movement into it. I'm so excited about that woman who quit by watching the free webinar. Like, whatever it is that works, right? It's almost like different levels, whatever it is you need. If 1 hour of inspiration and help and tools does it for you, great. If you need a month and a half of that, that's great. If you need more hand holding, that's great. Whatever it is that I can do to make it the right, like exactly the titrated point of entry for somebody, that to me is the magic.
I love it. And if someone wants to get started on that path, is your webinar is at ignited.com?
IGNTDRecovery.com.
Perfect. And they can see about your book, your webinar, and get started on the path and just see if it resonates with them and how it works for them.
100%. And by the way, as an aside, through the email chain that they get after it, they get a free Ignited Recovery roadmap that walks them through the initiation. It's not as in-depth, obviously, as the full course, but with that, I think the woman that quit for a few weeks, that's what she got. She got the guide, and she did that, and it was enough. And I will give you that 100% free just for signing up for the webinar and watching it. You get, it's like an 18-page booklet that fully for free will get you to completely change the way you think about this thing. I want people to get better.
That's awesome.
Right? We've got about 150,000 people a year dying from this shit. It's fucking ridiculous. We've got to end it. And if I can make a dent in that, then that's my victory.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is a massive problem. And I mean, that's the whole purpose for us doing this project, is just if we can help people find something that they connect with and resonate with, that'll get them started on the path. I mean, we've done our job. So I'd like to change gears a little with you for people that haven't met you before, and now they might be interested in Ignited and seeing what you're doing there. Can we learn a little more about you? Can you go over a little bit of your story? What led you down this path? How did you get to here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born on a sunny beach. No, I come from an upper middle class family in Israel, where I lived until the day I was 14. My dad was a physician. My mom was a human resource manager in a big bank there. And typical upper middle class upbringing, which, you know, for some people might seem really familiar and for other people not, but kind of like a small neighborhood in Tel Aviv, you know, friends all around the neighborhood, played around. For sure, my whole life I've had impulsivity and ADHD-like things, but I didn't get diagnosed as a kid. So that was it. Like, I did well in school, had a good life, started getting more kind of rebellious and aggressive as I was getting out of like 10, 11, moving it up to 14. And then right before 14, we moved to the States. Now, junior high and high school were not that easy for me. And I think they're not that easy for a lot of people, but I don't take rejection really well. I used to have a lot more social anxiety. I've sort of gotten over myself a little bit, but at the age of 14, we had moved to Chicago, and I got introduced to alcohol. And I write about a little bit of this in the book, but the full story is not there quite yet. And man, alcohol did it. Like, sitting in a sleepaway camp with all the guys and girls, like just hanging out, and somebody handed me some vodka and I drank it. And 15 minutes later, I'm not anxious. I'm not embarrassed. I don't care what the girl thinks about me as I'm like making a fool of myself. And it was a revelation that I could even feel that differently about myself. Over the next few years, between, let's say, the age of 14 and the age of 19, that went from weekend drinking a couple of times a month to daily weed smoking and weekend drinking every single weekend, like starting Thursday and ending Sunday, getting heavier and heavier drinking. By the time I got to college, I was drinking and smoking every single day. And then I had a bad breakup and a depression that went along with it. And then the wheels came completely off. I tried any drug I could. I just wanted to not feel the way that I felt. I got arrested once for shoplifting. And so I needed money. And being the entrepreneurial spirit that I am, I started selling drugs to get that money. I sold weed which was relatively profitable in upstate New York. But then when I moved to LA, I started selling harder drugs, MDMA, primarily ecstasy. And within a year and a half, I became a drug dealer. While being exposed to the drug, somebody introduced me to meth. I was still in college. I was at UCLA, and meth was my drug. I mean, I got hooked quickly. Now, knowing that I had ADHD symptoms, I totally understand why, right? That's that biology piece. I found a thing that made me able to focus, made me able to be productive in ways that I've never been able to be in my life. But for 5 years I was using, for 3 years I was a daily meth user, and
Wow.
I got bigger and bigger in drug dealing. And then I got in a motorcycle accident. They found a half a pound or so, a quarter to a half a pound of cocaine on me. And that started my story with the police being a lot more intense. And eventually a SWAT team came into my house at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and hauled me off to jail with a broken leg and all that kind of stuff. And that started my recovery journey, which had fits and starts. But I had the most traditional recovery kind of journey possible. My lawyer told me I got to go to rehab. I went to a traditional rehab.
So you were forced to go and get clean. It wasn't.
I mean, forced, more like directed to go, or I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison, or like 20 years in prison. So I went because, you know, I didn't want to spend 20 years in prison. But I got kicked out of rehab for using because my addiction to meth was big enough for that to happen. And that's when things started clicking for me. And I talk about that a little bit in the book. And I was sober for 3 years, completely in AA. Last year, not so much going to meetings, but still sober. But I was going to school now because I couldn't get a job. I literally couldn't get hired, like at the mall, because I had 9 felonies after that arrest.
Wow.
And so I went to school because that was the only thing I could do. And I was getting my master's and learning about addiction. And at some point I went, you know, I'm not actually buying into all the stuff that I've been hearing in the meetings. And I did the AA experiment when I took a drink, and I wanted to see where it would lead. And it was scary, and, you know, there was some stories that go along with that. But got into UCLA for my PhD, and really, since my master's, just been focusing all my effort on first figuring out what the hell happened to me and how I got addicted. I think I now have a pretty good idea of that. And now, like I said, trying to figure out how to take the lessons that I learned, the experiences that I had, and try to minimize the suffering and the pain for as many other people as I can.
Yeah. And now when you were drinking, especially when it was more alcohol and weed, and even when I started ramping up to every day, but you hadn't quite gotten into harder drugs yet, did you ever look at it like, hey, you know, this is affecting my life, or this is blocking me from achieving things? You were in it having fun?
Not yet. You know, I didn't realize back then how dissatisfied I was with life. And I don't know that a lot of 18-year-olds do. I was very introspective, but I did everything I could to quiet those voices, right? Like the deep, deep level of discomfort and shame and anxiety that I felt on a regular basis, I kept looking for outside things to fix those. And I come from a very unemotional family. It's not like anybody was having conversations with me about how to address this stuff. So, no.
And I think that's a common thing. I think most people don't really have these conversations, and kind of for a reason that you touch on a lot. There is this shame and stigma around addiction. And I don't know if it's the way we portray it in movies and in society, where it's like, well, an alcoholic is the person on a street drinking out of a brown paper bag, and, or it's all or nothing kind of idea, right? And so when people are not that, I think a lot of people struggle with, well, then what am I?
Right. So that's why in the book, what I go through is, if we think of the 4 factors, biology, psychology, environment, and spirituality, and we kind of look at everybody as having a level of severity within that, the way we typically imagine addicts is like the worst of everything, right? They've lost on all fronts. But that is one presentation, right? There are people who are just so biologically predisposed to anxiety that they need something out external to fix it. There are people who have environmental influences that are really big, and the mixes change. And so we need to expand the way we think about this big time.
I agree. And I'm also curious, when you were in those first 3 years doing more of the AA model and the strong abstinence model. When you were going through that, was it something that you felt was a struggle every day that you were really fighting? Or did you feel like it was, yes, this is working, I'm excited about the way this is going? How did that work for you?
I've always had the God struggle, so that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
But once I got kicked out of that first rehab, it was a pain in the ass in the first rehab, to be honest. I hated the meetings and whatever. But once I got kicked out, and I kind of made myself homeless because I just had a car to sleep in. I kind of committed to just doing whatever I needed to do. So whenever those thoughts would come in, I would throw them out because it was the thing I had to do. There were no other options that I knew of.
Yeah.
So I allowed myself to have the internal conversation, but I never really allowed it to go past that point. I just did whatever I needed to do because I knew I needed to stay out of jail.
Yeah.
Now I still did a year in jail, but a year compared to 13 to 20 or whatever I would have gotten otherwise was pretty freaking good. And I was happy about it. But at that point in my life, it was survival mode, like do what you need to do. And it worked, by the way, right? So because I was so desperate and my circumstances were so dire, I was willing to put up with all of that. Yeah. What I'm saying is, if we can find ways to help people before the circumstances get that dire, we can get more people out of jail, more people out of hospitals, more people out of morgues, instead of the AA way of looking at it, which is that's where you'll end up if you don't go to AA. Well, that's the way you'll end up if you don't go to AA because we didn't offer you anything else substantial along the way.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. And this is one of the reasons behind me asking is I feel so much of when I'm hearing the conversation, it's all about that rock bottom. And it's just about waiting until you go long enough to reach a big enough rock bottom where exactly like you said, your back's up against a big enough wall that you will put up and go through.
Yep. So I wrote an article on Psychology Today called The Rock Bottom Myth. And, if anybody wants to look that up, I'm in full agreement. I think that's
I will actually link that.
Yeah, it's a dangerous myth in the sense that, it tells people maybe this isn't bad enough for you yet because you're not willing to commit to this thing, right? Instead of saying, oh, this is bad enough for you to want to change something, let's do whatever you're willing to do right now.
Well, and it's funny because in my own story, I didn't have that major rock bottom where it was like, okay, everything's fallen apart, it's hit the wall and I have to change or die. It was more, I didn't like the way I was showing up in my life. I didn't like the way that I was relying on alcohol for me to be able to do business meetings and social environments and things like that. I didn't like it, so I wanted to stop it. But it's funny that you mentioned that because I didn't have that rock bottom. I even find myself up until recently, I've been sober now about 6-7 years, and I almost never talk about it because without that rock bottom, I'm almost feeling judged. Like, well, I'm not an alcoholic enough or whatever it is.
How messed up is that, right? Like you didn't buy in. You don't have the card. You can't be a card carrying member.
Totally.
Because you didn't suffer enough. Totally. I know it sucks.
Yeah, and I think that it's those, and this is what I love. When I came across you, actually, it was from your TEDx talk that you did on labels, and it just opened up my eyes because it was like, well, how come nobody is really talking about this? How come there's not more of a message around this when we're talking about addiction and when we're talking about helping people?
Well, I'll tell you why. You get pushback. I mean, like, I've been told that I'm killing people, but by sending this message out, I've been told that just the other week, like by now I just start blocking those people because I try to have conversations with them, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. Oftentimes, sometimes it does. But they'll start attacking the people who are trying to get help from me. And they'll attack them by saying things like, hey, this guy's going to tell you that it's okay to use, be careful or you'll die, and I go, this person is asking for help, and your version of help is scaring them away from asking for help. Like, what is wrong with your fucking head? And that's why people don't talk about it. They don't talk about it because they don't want to get beat up. And I get it, right? Like, it's not fun to wake up in the morning and see a message calling you a liar and a cheat and saying that you just do this for money. Look, I graduated from school in 2010. It's 2018. It took me 7 years to get my PhD. So I've been working on this for 17 years. I don't own a house. There's no Ferrari for me. There's no Bentley. If you think I do this for money, you're fucking stupid, right? You're a fucking idiot. I'm not doing this for money. I don't take calls at 11 o'clock from people who need help. I don't answer messages on Facebook from people who need help for money. When I ran a treatment center, I had to have 2 other jobs because I paid my staff way more than I paid myself, right? That's why the thing went down, is I didn't make money. It's so fucked up, the explanations that people will come up with as to why somebody has a different way of doing this. It's worked for me, and it's worked for dozens, if not over 100 other people that I've seen. One of those, by the way, is a testimonial you can see on the Ignited Recovery page, right? Like an actual person who was brave enough to speak about it publicly. This isn't a money game. Would I love to one day actually be able to own a house? Sure. But if that makes me a bad person, then, you know, there are a lot of people struggling in the world. I do this because it disgusts me that there are millions of people who are not getting help, and they're being blamed for not getting help. And that's what I think needs to change. And so I love that this conversation exists, because somebody will listen to this and go, oh my God, I didn't even know there was a different way, and get help. And if that does it for one person that saves their lives, then it was worth the hour.
Completely. Well, and again, getting to know you and seeing what you're doing, it comes across that you're doing it to make a difference. You're doing it to help. And I think so many times that's kind of the go-to to people that are threatened whenever there's a new way of doing things, because they're suffering through, they're really having, you know, they're working hard to stay sober, to do what they're doing, and they've accomplished great things in many cases. But as soon as a different option or a different conversation starts, they feel threatened by it. Like, oh, well, if there's a different way, well, no, that won't work because it wouldn't work for me. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about, let's share the message. What works for you might not work for the next person. And when 90% of people with the problem aren't getting help, those people are dying. And so instead of focusing on the few people that might play in a dangerous territory by trying something new out, I love your message. It's don't try it. If you're doing something that works, do it. If it's not working and you're going to slip back into the same pattern, same life you've been doing, or you're not even making change in the first place, here's something. And here's something that works. Here's something with low barrier to entry that you can get into. And it's something that can actually help.
But maybe I'll say this, right? And I think maybe we can end on this. If you listen to my message and you're secure in your recovery, not a single piece of it speaks to you suggesting you should stop doing what you're doing that works. I've never said that once in my life. If you're listening to my message and you get threatened, maybe there's a piece of you that is unhappy with the solution you've found, and you've been looking for something else for 6 months, a year, 20 years, whatever it is. Now, that's not on me. If you've been following a method you don't like and you wish there was something different, then you need to take a deep look inside. And whether you follow what I do or what any one of dozens of other people who does this sort of work does, you need to figure out your internal struggle with why it is that you're discontent. Because recovery is not about abstinence. If abstinence is part of your recovery, that's great. Mm-hmm. But recovery is not about abstinence. Recovery is about a fruitful life that brings you contentment and joy and feels purposeful. So if you don't feel like you have that, and you need to take it out on me because you feel threatened by the fact that I do and other people that I work with get that, that's not my issue. And what I do doesn't impact your recovery in any way, shape, or form. But you need to look at yourself, because the abstinence alone will not buy you. It'll buy you not using, because that's what the abstinence means, but it won't buy you the true meaning of having that purposeful life. And I welcome everybody who is struggling with that question to look deep inside of them and find the things that will give them purpose in life. You don't need to go to Ignited Recovery for that. But if you don't have it, you're going to be miserable the rest of your life, and you better find a solution for that.
You know, it's funny. One of the common, as we interview more and more people and talk to more and more people who are actually thriving in recovery, probably the number one thing that's similar through all out the stories is finding something and doing something to improve their life. It's almost never, well, I stopped drinking and now my life's great, or I stopped taking drugs, or I stopped online shopping, whatever it is. It's always, I improved my life. I bettered
100%.
my life. I find that things that can light me on fire.
100%.
And live.
And
so,
ignite.
yeah, ignite. So it all comes together. One more question for you before I know you got to go. What is the best part about being sober for you and living in recovery for you?
You know, man, I can't even nail that down to a single thing. Like, the life I have right now is a life I didn't even know I wanted, and I couldn't fathom not having anymore. I've got a family I love. I've got kids I fucking adore. Like, it's just over the moon about. I have an amazing relationship with my wife. I get to help people every day, whereas in my past, unbeknownst to me, I was hurting myself and other people every day. I'm grateful for almost every single piece of it. Like I said, I wouldn't mind if there was a little bit more financial like security in my life, but it is what it is. I would say wholesale, my life now is so full of purpose and contribution and joy that it all works together. I love it.
That's incredible, Adi. I mean, you're doing great work. You're doing awesome things. And I think your message is one that more and more people need to hear. So I'm really happy that you spent this time with me today. Thank you so much. And remind us one more time, if we want to go further with you, where should we go?
So ignitedrecovery.com, no matter how you spell that, IGNTD is the company name, but whether you spell full ignited or ignitedrecovery.com is the place for the webinar, the free webinar, and all the stuff for the course. If you want to learn more about me and the stuff I do with my wife, then ignited.com, IGNTD.com is the general website for that. That's where you'll find that banner on top about the book.
Excellent. And that's where we can find your podcast as well, right?
Yep. And so if this comes out soon, the middle of this month, the middle of March, I'm speaking in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have a talk for the public on the evening of the 15th, and then I have an all-day training. If you want to see what Ignited Recovery is for professionals, I have an all-day training in Ohio happening on the 16th. And then in mid-April, I am the closing keynote for the CAMF, the California MFT conference in Orange County.
Sounds awesome. Well, thanks again for your time today, and good luck with everything you're doing. You're making a difference, so just keep doing it.
Thank you so much, man. And thanks for having me on, Roger. I'm so happy to see this thing happening, and I'll keep following you guys and see what's going on.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.